The news came like morning thunder, rattling every hut and stirring up even the deepest roots of the quiet Igbo town of Yumuse. It was the kind of announcement that traveled faster than the wind and louder than the town crier's gong. The prince is coming back. The prince is coming back from abroad. From Yumanwok's compound to Izima Square, and from Neka's market stall to Obiojin, the excitement spread like wild yam tendrils crawling up a fence. Children danced with naked joy. Mothers whispered in awe. Fathers stood taller, even though they had not seen the prince since he was a boy taken abroad to study and become somebody. The most restless of all were the young girls of marriageable age. Hearts began pounding as possibilities bloomed like hibiscus flowers in their minds. The prince wasn't just returning home. Rumor had it that he was coming to choose a wife. And not just any wife. A true wife of Yumuse. A girl of beauty, humility, and possibly one of the lucky new maids chosen to serve in the royal household. At the center of this storm of excitement were two friends, Amush and Obianuju. The two girls had been close since childhood, raised in compounds not far from each other. But their hearts were woven with different threads. Where Amush was gentle, calm, and reserved, Obianuju was fiery, lively, and ambitious. When the palace messenger arrived at their compounds, bringing word that both girls had been selected to serve in the royal house to assist during the prince's return, it was Obianuju who jumped and screamed first. "Chanique, my God is working!" she shouted, grabbing her wrapper and dancing in circles. She couldn't wait to enter the palace. In her mind, this was more than service, it was opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, the prince would notice her. Maybe she would wear the silk cloths of royalty. Maybe she would sit beside him, holding a goblet of palm wine, and command respect like the queen she had always believed herself to be. But Amush, on the other hand, received the news with quiet eyes. She sat beneath the mango tree at the back of her father's compound, staring into the orange sky, her face filled not with excitement, but worry. Her father, a retired hunter, and her mother, who sold firewood in baskets at the roadside, had insisted she go. "Do you think such opportunities come every day?" her mother asked, clutching the beads around her neck. "If the prince marries you, our name will change forever." Amush had no desire to serve in the palace. Not because she was ungrateful or proud, but because her dream was to go to school. Real school. University. To read books, wear spectacles if it came to that, and maybe one day become a nurse, or even a teacher. But dreams didn't fill stomachs. And her family was poor. Too poor to afford such luxury. So, reluctantly, she packed her things. The day they arrived at the royal compound, the air was thick with perfume and powdered pride. The palace was something out of a storybook. Red earth bricks polished with white chalk, golden lion statues at the entrance, maids lined up like river dancers in matching uniforms. The new girls were shown to the servants' quarters, each receiving a wrapper, 2 blouses, and instructions on how to behave when the prince finally arrived. It was Obianuju who adjusted her scarf, looked around, and whispered, "Amush, this is it. This is where our lives will change." But Amush only smiled faintly and said, "We shall see." The prince arrived in a convoy of black jeeps, wearing sunglasses and walking like he had returned from heaven. His name was Prince Ikena, tall, fine like freshly cooked yam, with eyes that could see through a person. He spoke slowly, moved carefully, and looked like he'd been trained not to smile unless it was worth it. From that first day, every girl in the palace began hustling for his attention. Some added extra pepper to his meals, some danced at the entrance hoping he would look out from the balcony. Others wore their tightest wrappers when sweeping the compound. But not Amush. She did her work quietly, avoided attention, and never so much as glanced at the prince. In fact, she avoided his path entirely. Then, one afternoon, something happened. It was the prince's favorite cup, a glass goblet from overseas. It broke in the kitchen, and somehow, the blame fell on Amush. She was called to the main hall, where the prince stood in full traditional attire, his red cap tilted sideways, his expression unreadable. "You broke my cup?" he asked coldly. Amush looked him in the eyes and replied, "I did not. But if you think I did, I cannot force you to believe otherwise." There was silence. He stepped forward. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," she answered. "But that does not mean I will take a blame that is not mine." Gasps filled the hall. One of the maids tugged her arm, whispering, Amush, are you mad? You're talking to a prince. But she stepped back, bowed slightly, and walked away. Just like that. That night, the prince didn't sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind wrapped around the girl who dared to speak her truth in front of him, without fear, without shaking, and without the usual fake apologies. Who is she really? He asked his cousin, who laughed and replied. Just one poor girl from the village. She no even sabi hustle. Not her friend find pass. But that only made the prince more curious. Days passed, and he began watching Amush. From a distance, the way she helped the older maids, how she washed clothes with speed but never asked for praise, how she always scribbled something into her small notepad after work. What was she writing? What was she thinking? He asked the palace guard to investigate her background, and the report came back simple and short. Daughter of a poor hunter. Quiet. No past scandals. Dreams of going to school. That was the turning point. The prince's interest deepened, not just in her beauty, though she was beautiful, but in her strength, in her independence, in her lack of desperation. While other girls battled for his attention like flies on meat, Amush was the only one who wanted nothing from him, and that made her shine even more. Now, palace tongues began to wag. Have you noticed how the prince looks at Amush? Obianuju has been trying to seduce him for weeks, but he follows the one who does nothing. Obianuju herself noticed it, and jealousy, like a bitter leaf, grew in her heart. But the story was far from over. For even though fate had begun to twist in Amush's favor, the path ahead was not smooth. Envy, tradition, and pride would still rise against her. Yet she would fight, not for love, but for freedom, to be seen, heard, and allowed to choose her own future. The palace of Yumuse had never been so lively. Since the prince's return, it had become a theater of performance, where everyone, from servants to chiefs, played their parts, wore their masks, and chased favor like hungry birds after fallen grains. But beneath the laughter, singing, and dancing, a new kind of tension began to rise, one born of jealousy, suspicion, and silent rivalry. It started small. Obianuju noticed the change first. One morning, while sweeping the front yard of the prince's private wing, she saw him leaning on the upstairs balcony, arms folded, gaze fixed, not on the beauty of the compound or the skies above, but on Amush, who was quietly washing the palace dogs at the back, her wrapper tied firmly around her waist. He stood for nearly 10 minutes, and when his cousin, Ikin, came out and teased him with a nudge, he simply said, "She is different." Those words spread faster than fire in dry harmattan. Obianuju could not hide her bitterness. She had always been the more confident one, the one whose hips swayed proudly when she walked, who knew how to giggle at the right time, and who had the best of borrowed perfumes from her aunt in the city. Yet, here she was, ignored, while Amush, who didn't even wear earrings or paint her nails, had the prince following her movements like a shadow. One night, Obianuju approached Amush in the maid's quarters, her voice laced with mock sweetness. "Amush, you are really lucky, oh. You don't even try, and yet the prince is following you. I hope you won't deny us when you become queen." Amush looked up from the wrapper she was folding, her face calm. "I didn't come here to become queen." Obianuju scoffed. "Then why are you here? You think they brought you for charity?" "I'm here because my parents wanted me to come. I'm not looking for anything." "Well, you better start looking," Obianuju snapped, "before people who are hungry for this chance take it by force." That was the first time Amush felt it, the weight of eyes on her, not with kindness, but with envy. Days turned into weeks, and the prince's interest deepened. He started giving small instructions. "Let Amush be the one to serve my meals. Tell Amush to clean the study, not the others. I want Amush to join us at the village festival." Whispers rose like smoke in every corner of the palace. Chief Nwokeji, one of the elders in council, voiced what many were already thinking. "Your Highness, I hope you are not considering that girl as wife material. She is from a poor family. No connection, no pedigree." But Prince Ikena, bold and composed, replied without hesitation. "What is pedigree without character? I want someone who tells me the truth, not one who bows out of fear." Still, not everyone appreciated his reasoning. The pressure began to mount. Royal expectations were not toys. A prince could not just fall for a maid, especially one who didn't chase him. One late evening, something happened that shook the palace again. The prince invited Amush to join him in the palace garden for a simple meal. No ceremony, No crowd. Just boiled yam, garden eggs, and palm oil served under the moonlight. Amush arrived hesitantly, her steps unsure. Her heart beat like a talking drum in her chest. He smiled and said, "Sit, please. I won't bite." She sat slowly. For a while, they ate in silence. Then he asked, "Why are you always quiet?" "I speak when I have something to say. But everyone here talks too much." "That's why I prefer silence," she said. The prince chuckled, his first genuine laugh since returning to Nigeria. Then he asked, "What do you really want in life?" Amush looked up at the stars, then at him. "To go to school. To learn. To be somebody. Not because of fame, but so I can help others. My mother still fetches firewood. My father has a bad leg. If I can go to school, maybe I can give them a better life." That night, the prince couldn't sleep again. By the next morning, the whispers had grown into thunder. He took her to the garden. He fed her with his own hands. "She's bewitching him. There's something not ordinary about that girl." One of the older maids went straight to the queen mother, breathing fire. "Your Majesty, that girl is a threat. She's turning the prince's heart away from those of better background." The queen mother had noticed too, and though she didn't yet voice her concern, she summoned the chief steward secretly. "Keep an eye on that girl," she said, "and tell me everything she does." But Amush remained unaware of the growing plots around her. She continued her duties quietly. She helped the cook when she could. She cleaned the corridors. She assisted the palace guards when they carried heavy water basins. But she never asked for favors, never wore makeup, never behaved like she had captured royalty. Yet, her calmness only made her more threatening. A turning point came one Sunday morning during the palace Thanksgiving service, held under the old mango tree in the royal courtyard. As the choir sang and the elders prayed, Prince Ikenna did something no one expected. He stood before the whole gathering, cleared his throat, and said, "Before we end today's Thanksgiving, I want to make a personal announcement. I have chosen someone, not for political reasons, not because of tribe or wealth, but because her heart is pure. Her name is Amush." A scream escaped someone's mouth. Obianuju dropped the offering bowl she was holding. The queen mother's hand froze mid-clap. Amush, who had been serving zobo to guests, stood paralyzed, the tray in her hands trembling. The courtyard turned into thunder. After that day, nothing remained the same. The palace became a boiling pot of rage. Some called her a witch. Others called her lucky. Many accused her of using charms. Obianuju? She didn't speak to Amush again. Not a word. Amush herself was confused. She didn't ask for love. She didn't dress to impress. She didn't kneel with flirtation. But somehow, the prince had chosen her. And now, the whole kingdom was watching. But her greatest challenge was yet to come. For in the shadows of the palace, a dark plan was already forming. Not everyone would allow a poor girl with no name to rise so high without a fight. The days that followed the prince's announcement were nothing short of a whirlwind wrapped in a thunderstorm. The palace, once filled with orderly routines and predictable silence, became a battlefield of secret glares, forced smiles, and unspoken war. Amush, the simple girl with a dream of education, now found herself in a place she never begged for, the center of a royal crisis. The queen mother was the first to react. Though she had smiled in public and nodded as if everything was fine, her spirit was boiling beneath her elegant wrappers and coral beads. As far as she was concerned, this was not how queens were chosen. She had already prepared a list of suitable girls, daughters of prominent men, girls from noble homes, girls who knew how to curtsy properly, serve wine gracefully, and speak English with the softness of silk. But now, a girl with cracked heels and faded slippers, a firewood seller's daughter, was being mentioned as the next queen of Yumuz. She summoned her most trusted friend, Lolo Uganma, the widow of the former village chief, and together they planned. "The boy has been blinded," the queen mother said, sipping bitter leaf tea slowly. "We must open his eyes before it is too late." "How do we handle it?" Lolo Uganma asked. "She is already gaining sympathy. The people love stories like hers, poor girl becoming queen. It's sweet to their ears. Then we must make it bitter to their hearts." At the same time, Obianuju, once the shining star of the maids, was now a fading moon, burning with silent rage. Her once bouncy steps had slowed. Her fake eyelashes stayed in their box. Her daily singing in the corridor stopped. She had never been humiliated like this. She, who came prepared. She, who had painted her toenails the night before the prince returned. And yet, the crown was falling into the lap of someone who didn't even want to be there. Her bitterness turned to action. She went to the Queen Mother's quarters one morning and knelt humbly. "Your Majesty," she said with a calm voice that barely disguised her motive, "I know I should not speak like this, but I fear the prince is making a mistake. That girl, Amush, there is something dark about her." The Queen Mother looked at her slowly. "Speak clearly, child. What do you mean by dark? I have seen her leave the maids' quarters late at night, whispering to herself. I once caught her holding something like a charm wrapped in black cloth. It was a lie, of course, but in politics, especially palace politics, truth was not always necessary. What mattered was suspicion." The Queen Mother nodded, slowly stroking her beads. "Thank you, Obianuju. You have done well." Meanwhile, Amush continued to carry herself with quiet dignity. But inside her, conflict brewed like rainy clouds gathering over the village hills. She never planned to fall for anyone, especially not a prince. But Prince Ikena was not like others. He listened when she spoke. He looked at her like she mattered. And when he asked her about her dreams, he didn't laugh or change the topic like others did. He listened like he truly wanted to understand. Still, she struggled. "This is not my world," she often whispered to herself at night. "I came here to help my family, not to wear crowns." One evening, as she was returning from the stream, she met the prince alone under the Udala tree. He had dismissed his guards. "Amush," he said gently, "I know everything is moving too fast, but I need to ask you something." She paused, her clay pot heavy on her head. "Ask," she said softly. "If I remove all the palace, all the guards, all the gold and titles, would you still want me?" Her heart stopped for a moment. She hadn't expected that question. She gently set her pot on the ground, wiped her forehead, and replied with honesty. "I never came here to want you, and I don't know if I do yet. But I respect you, and if the world ever strips you of everything, I will still respect the man who respects me." He smiled, deeply moved. "That's more than enough for me." The next morning, the storm came. Amush was summoned to the palace judgment hall. She arrived confused, her legs trembling slightly. The Queen Mother sat on the high chair, flanked by Lolo Uganma and two stern-looking elders. Obianuju stood to the side, pretending to wipe tears from her eyes. "You have been accused," the Queen Mother began coldly, "of using charms and performing strange acts in the dead of night." Gasps filled the room. Amush's eyes widened. "What? That is not true, Your Majesty. We found this under your bed," Lolo Uganma said, holding up a small black cloth, tied with red thread and stained with palm oil. "That is not mine," Amush cried. "I have never seen that thing before." Obianuju stepped forward. "Forgive me, Amush. I tried to warn you, but now the truth is out. We all suspected you." Amush turned to her, her eyes blazing with hurt. "You're lying. You planted that. I never." "Silence," the Queen Mother shouted. "Do you think we are fools?" Just then, the prince walked in, his face calm but his voice sharp. "What is going on here?" They all bowed. "She is accused of charm use," the Queen Mother explained. "We have evidence." The prince looked at the cloth. "Where was it found?" "Under her bed." "Who found it?" "Obianuju." "And who else witnessed it?" "No one." He took a long breath. "Then I say this trial is over. Dismissed." "But," the Queen Mother began. "I said dismissed. I know Amush, and I know when lies are being dressed in royal wrappers." He took Amush by the hand and led her out. But that public humiliation made things worse. The palace was now a place of hatred, whispers, and brewing danger. Amush could no longer walk freely. Every smile she saw felt fake. Every kindness felt poisoned. Even the guards no longer nodded at her. Some maids stopped eating when she entered. And Obianuju? She walked around with boldness again, fueled by the Queen Mother's subtle support. That night, Amush cried alone behind the servants' quarters, pressing her knees into the red soil, asking God why she was chosen for this pain. She wasn't even sure she wanted the prince anymore. It was too much hatred, too much expectation. But as the moon rose above the palace walls, she heard a voice behind her. "Don't break." It was Prince Ikena. "Even if the whole palace turns against you, I won't. You have already taught me what no book in London could, what strength looks like." But outside the walls of their love, the storm was gathering. The Queen Mother had made a silent vow. "Over my dead body will that girl become queen." And Obianuju had sworn too. If I can't have the crown, no one will. The days ahead would test Amush's strength, the prince's courage, and the fate of a kingdom that never imagined a maid could shake its foundations. The air in Yumyus changed. It wasn't the kind of change you could touch or explain. It lived in the silence between footsteps, in the stiff smiles of the maids, in the way the guards avoided Amush's eyes, and in the sudden disappearances of things she had once been allowed to use. Her water basin was gone one morning. Her clothes were scattered the next. And by the third day, her food portion began shrinking. All signs pointed to one fact. Amush was no longer wanted in the palace. But she didn't leave. Not because she was holding on to the prince. Not because she desired the crown. But because she had survived too much to be pushed out by small tricks. She carried on, quietly, like rain that falls at night, gentle but certain. Meanwhile, in the royal chambers, the queen mother grew more desperate. The pressure from the village council had intensified. Your son must choose a wife suitable for royalty, they insisted. This girl may be pure-hearted, but she has no background. She is not one of us. But the prince refused to bend. What is royalty without freedom? He replied one morning before walking out on a meeting. This defiance pushed the queen mother to her final move, a plan so dangerous it could ruin everything. She summoned Obianuju late at night. I will not let her win, the queen mother said. If you want this crown so badly, I will give you one last chance. But it must be done cleanly. Obianuju's eyes gleamed. What do you want me to do? Create a scandal. One big enough to shame her out of the palace. We don't need to hurt her. Just destroy her image. Once that's done, Ikena will have no choice. The plan moved fast. One afternoon, while most of the palace staff were gathered at the village square for a celebration, Obianuju crept into Amush's small room and placed a small bag beneath her sleeping mat, filled with old palace jewelry and money. Then, she waited. That evening, a loud cry rang through the palace. Thief! Thief among us! The prince's late grandmother's beads are missing. The guards rushed to the servants' quarters. After a forced search, the bag was discovered in Amush's room. Gasps, screams, accusations. The queen mother stood in the center of the chaos, faking shock. After all we gave her, she wants to rob us. Obianuju sobbed in the corner. I warned her. I warned her this path was dangerous. Even the other maids who once admired her now turned cold. Only Amush stood still, her face blank, her eyes focused on the floor. Not because she was guilty, but because her heart had finally broken. She was dragged to the judgment hall. This time, even Prince Ikena was not present. He had been sent away by the queen mother on urgent duty to settle land disputes in a neighboring village. They thought they were safe. But what they didn't know was that Prince Ikena had returned early. He had taken a shorter route through the bush paths. Something in his spirit had told him to come home fast. He arrived just in time to hear the queen mother pronounce, because of your betrayal and theft, you are hereby banished from this palace. Immediately, suddenly, a voice thundered from the entrance. Over my dead body. Everyone turned. The prince walked in, covered in dust and sweat, but his eyes were full of fire. You banished the girl I love over a lie. The queen mother rose, startled. Ikena, you were not supposed to return until after you destroyed her reputation? Until you crowned Obianuju as queen. He turned to the guards. Release her. They hesitated. Now, they let go of Amush. Ikena held her hand firmly and turned to the crowd. She didn't steal anything. Obianuju, tell the truth now, or I will make sure you spend the rest of your days in shame. Obianuju froze. Everyone stared. The pressure cracked her spirit. Tears rushed down her face. I'm sorry. I put the bag there. The queen mother told me to. I just wanted the crown. I'm sorry. Gasps filled the air. Even the queen mother's mouth opened slightly in disbelief. Prince Ikena looked around and declared with a clear, loud voice. Let it be known, today and forever, that I choose Amush. She never begged me. She never chased me. She never tried to win me. But she won me. With her truth. With her dignity. With her silence. The palace stood in silence. Some bowed their heads in shame. Others nodded in awe. Even the elders in council could not speak. The queen mother collapsed into her seat, defeated. Later that night, she called Amush privately. I fought you because I was afraid. I thought you came to take what didn't belong to you. But now I see, it was never yours you wanted. You only wanted peace. I pray you forgive me. Amush, with tears in her eyes, simply said, "I have nothing to forgive, Your Majesty. I just want to live." A few months later, the palace gates opened wider than ever before. A grand wedding was held, not with excessive gold or imported wines, but with the warmth of community and truth. The prince and Amush walked hand in hand as drums sang, palm wine flowed, and the entire village rejoiced. Even the queen mother danced. Obianuju left Yumuse quietly days later, ashamed and forgotten. And Amush? She was no longer just the poor girl sent to be a maid. She was the queen who never begged to be queen. The girl who spoke her mind, stood in truth, and loved not for gain, but because she was seen, respected, and finally, truly valued. Years later, Queen Amush opened a small community school on the palace grounds for girls like her, who were born into dust but dreamt of light. Every morning, she walked through the classrooms, smiling at the girls who once looked like her. And when they asked her how she became queen, she would simply say, "By being myself."